The views and opinions expressed by the participants on this show are not necessarily those of Stewart Information Services Corporation, Stewart Title, or Stewart Insurance. Before you make any investment, you should seek the advice of your investment advisor or attorney.
Whether you're a real estate broker, realtor, homeowner, buyer, or seller, everything matters when it comes to real estate. This is Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title. Stewart Title's Bill Knapik and guests open the door to what really matters in owning, buying, and selling real estate. And now, Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title, brought to you by Stewart Insurance. Here to inform, entertain, and inspire, Bill Knapik.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title. I am your host, Bill Knapik. Here we are on show number 356, the final show of 2020, and it is a special show indeed. We thank you for listening. If you're a regular listener, welcome back, and if you're just new to the show, sit back and enjoy the show. We are here to bring great information. We are here to inspire and even entertain along the way. The final show of 2020. What a year it has been. It's been a tremendous year in real estate here in Houston. We're going to find out about some of the other areas with our very special guest. His name is Dr. Ted C. Jones. He is the chief economist at Stewart Title for many years now, formerly the chief economist at Texas A&M University. And, of course, I always say, because it's true, he is the eighth wonder in the real estate world. Ted, welcome to the show.
Man, it's an honor to be back, and it's really neat. I mean, last show of the year, to be able to look at 2020 in the rearview mirror, man, it's so good to go forward, isn't it?
Well, I'm going to say that I think back looking at the windshield of 2020 early on, it is incredible to see how it's turned out and all the twists and turns. So here you are. Let's tell people what you do for Stewart Title.
Well, as chief economist, I actually provide research to internal and external customers to allow them to make better informed decisions. That's the public and home buying, that's realtors, that's investors and lenders, and also for people within our own organization, Stewart Title. You know, we're traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and so we're a big company, global company, do business in multiple countries, not just all 50 states. If we can give you information and analyses that allows you to make a better informed decision, we're all better off.
That's right. And by the way, our stock symbol is STC. And you are a major resource, as you're saying, for real estate professionals, for people that just follow real estate. And also, as you said, for our internal company. And we have people, as an international company, we have people all over the world, but certainly here in Houston, we are well covered and throughout the United States. As far as what an economist does and how you tie that into what you're doing at Stewart and how that resource works, let's tell people a little bit about that.
Well, I've got a blog, anywhere from 2 to 10 blogs a month, and you can look at that at blog.stewart.com. The one I'm working on right now, and just finishing up, is going to look at metropolitan statistical area employment. There's 300 MSAs across the country. Houston, the Woodlands, Sugarland, metropolitan statistical areas, multiple counties. And I look at job growth, last 12 months, last month. This is unique now. We're looking at how many jobs we lost from February to the trough in April or May, depending on which city you're talking about. Then what percent of those we've recovered back, which is pretty amazing. I also have a Twitter account, DRTCJ, Dr. Ted C. Jones, DRTCJ. I do anywhere from 50 to 100 tweets a month. By the way, mine aren't political. If you're looking for politics,
that's refreshing, Ted. That's one of the greatest things. They're full of great information. That's the beauty of the tweet.
They're all economics and real estate and interest rates. And then I typically give about 150 economic forecast presentations each year. I've done 242 this year. When you don't have to travel as much, you can pack a lot more in a day. So I've done more than one per working day if you think about that this year. So been a good year, but a great year to look in that rearview mirror. I'll say that 4 or 5 more times, I think.
Also, the top 10 list. I mean, those are always great. You bring forth top 10 lists as well.
Love top 10 lists, like the 10 best places to buy a home in 2021, the 10 hottest housing markets, the 10 cities that are probably the most challenging for first-time home buyers, those type things. Those aren't my lists. I'm actually talking about someone else's research and even tell you where those lists come from.
Well, before we get into 2021, 2020 has been incredible. But what are some of the things that have surprised you the most about 2020? Let's say as you looked at it in the beginning and as it has unfolded to this very end, the last week of the year.
When we talked, earlier in the year, I believe that we were looking at a very positive year in front of us. And even though it was election year, I thought that things would, economically go well. And then along mid-March, Actually, the 11th March, I flew back into town and figured I'm grounded for the year, so to speak. What happens to the world's largest economy when you shut it down? Everyone stays at home except for essential personnel. I mean, the essential personnel, that's emergency room people. And I'm very fortunate in real estate because real estate worked out to a big component. And early on, the question was, what will our GDP fall to? GDP, gross domestic product, is simply the value of all the goods and services we produce. And my estimate was at that point in time, we would drop for the year down 10 to 14%. Now, some of the others were saying we wouldn't go down that much. Some said we would go more. And here's the first thing that surprised me. Now, we knew it was going to plunge, and it plunged in April. In fact, GDP is on a quarterly basis, and so it's January, February, March. Even though it only happened in the latter half of March, our GDP dropped 5%. Total value of goods and services for that entire quarter. After a good January and February, March was so bad it went below, plunged this deep into it, and then along comes the second quarter. We dropped over 32%, the largest drop in GDP in the history of the United States. Now, that's an annualized basis. And then along comes, that second quarter is April, May, June. Along comes third quarter, plus 33.1%. After looking at the largest decline in history, we then looked at the largest gain in history. Now, we're still down for the year. In fact, right now, Goldman Sachs says we're going to be down about 4.6% this year. I was forecasting in the middle of March down 10 to 14%. I would have been happy with 10 to 14% when you shut down the economy as we shut it down. So shows you the resilience of the U.S. economy. Now, that said, not all sectors are good. Let's look at our leisure and hospitality, our restaurants, what have you. Man,
cruise ships,
airlines, hotels, spas, resorts, casinos. Think about those and how those industries have been decimated. On the other hand, some industries have done extremely well. It's surprising that our purchases, at literally food and drug, food and beverages, they're only down 20% year to date. I'm amazed that after we've been shut down so much, we're only down 20%. On the other hand, we know that gasoline stations are off 16%. We're just not traveling as much. And that has hurt oil prices. Houston, here we are. The whole country's got this pandemic frontiness. And then if you're in oil and gas producing areas such as Houston, Texas, which is the technology and the management side, Midland, Odessa, which is the actual production side, western North Dakota, southeastern New Mexico, they also have that oil and gas plunge. We saw oil and gas literally drop in the teens effectively on price for a month. It is amazing that Houston's done as well as it's done in Midland, Odessa, and other oil producing areas. So had all that rolled up, and what we've come up with is we're doing pretty doggone well, but how that doing well is distributed is not even. Look at retail sales. Retail sales until a month ago in October set the highest level in the history of the United States. But what we were buying was different, and where we were buying it was different. Think about retail sales. Oh, and what this pandemic has done, let's set a couple stages. This pandemic accelerated existing trends. You and I were already we were already shopping online. We just bought a lot more. we many of us were already working. Now, I don't work from home. I typically work from the road. I used to be on the road anywhere from 240 to 260 days a year. If you want to know my address, it's WIFI. As long as I have Wi-Fi, I can do my job. The rest of America learned, not rest of America, but the majority of America learned you could too. Y'all can work from home. We don't have to be in that office every day. And so we accelerated the trend of working away. Now, we're sitting here in Houston, Texas, and not only the fourth largest city, but the largest city in America with the highest vacancy rate in offices. One of my commercial friends tells me that vacancy in offices here is probably about 26%. And think about it. We've just shown we don't need as much office as we currently occupy or pay rent on. I want to bet that vacancy rate even increases over time. And so that's another trend that we had. We had another trend on migration. I want to wind you back 20 years ago. People were leaving California, taxes, and other economic concerns and type environment, and they were heading to, Colorado and Utah and Idaho, Oregon and Washington and Montana, Arizona. Well, along came the tax cut a couple of years ago, and that accelerated that trend, that exodus. Ooh, boom, along comes a pandemic and accelerated again. Look at the number of Silicon Valley firms that have come to, or have announced are coming to Texas. Look at Houston, Texas, HP Enterprise headquarters. Who would ever imagine? Now, see, I'm old enough. I remember when Compaq came about.
So do I.
And I remember when HP bought Compaq, and lo and behold, who would ever imagine that, HP would bring back their global headquarters, so to speak, HP Enterprise Center to Houston, Texas. So kind of intriguing. Now, that migration isn't centered just on California. For decades, we've seen an exodus from the Northeast. I call it the high tax states: Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, come down into Maryland. Throw in some of the Rust Belt, including Illinois. We've seen that exodus to the Southeast, the Sun Belt, for decades. Again, tax cuts accelerated that, and even more so this pandemic. I got to one of my speeches. I actually been on the road since September some. One of my first speeches in September on the road was a Florida Association of Mortgage Professionals. These are mortgage brokers, lenders, and what have you. And in Orlando, by the way, we social distance every third row, every sixth seat. And I got, and so you felt very comfortable. And to my knowledge, there was no transmission of coronavirus or COVID at all during that, of the 100-some people that were at this event. But it was intriguing. I was talking to a mortgage broker from Orlando. And I said to him, what percent of your borrowers are from out of Orlando? And I don't remember what percent level he used in 60, but it's 60-some% were from New York and New Jersey alone that were applying for loans. And he says, I don't need to advertise locally. I ought to hang a shingle to get your loan, on the subway tunnels in New York, and then when you come to Florida, get your loan with me. Kind of intriguing how that's changed. So that's one of the other trends we accelerated. So we've seen.
Well, and also home improvement. I mean, people were already fixing up their homes, but now places like the Home Depot and Lowe's, it's incredible.
Oh, I want you to think back to 9/11, the tragedy of 9/11. We all knew
that's right.
Now, we didn't shut down because of fear of getting the virus. We did shut down for fear of another attack when you were out. Remember, theaters were empty at that point in time, and restaurants were empty. And I made a national news commentary. What would you buy today in the stock market? And I said, I'd buy a Lowe's. This is 2001, 9/11. I said, I'm going to buy a Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart. They said, why Walmart? I said, you still need toothpaste and toilet paper. And so when this came up, I said it all over again. It's deja vu all over again. In fact, John, you think about Fogerty from Creedence, right? Deja vu all over again. Mark Twain, he said it more refined. History may not repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. We're seeing all this again, what we saw then. And of course, then I'd forecasted that we were going to sit at home, fear to go out. And after a week or 2 or 3 months at home, your wife's going to say, you paint this restroom, or we remodel that bathroom, or we do this or that. Well, we're doing it all over again, just like we saw before.
Well, let's reel it back to Houston, Texas, especially for the real estate community as this all unfolded in 2020. And we're going to get to 2021 in a little bit. But just looking back, a lot of realtors, we've had record-breaking months here in terms of sales in Houston. But at the very beginning, when it first hit, realtors were afraid, and there was a short lull where everybody wanted to see what happened. But what do you think accounted for all the super records that were achieved this year once things picked up again for the real estate community in Houston?
Well, first of all, let's address the short lull. The short lull was we didn't know a lot about this virus. We didn't know about it. We didn't know how contagious it was. We speculated how deadly it was. We didn't know if there was any therapeutics or treatments. That means if you caught it, you wouldn't die from it. First of all, let me talk about this. This thing kind of hit home early on for me, my family. Our oldest daughter, we have 2 daughters, is a registered nurse, lives in Portland, Oregon. She and her husband, they have 2 daughters, 2 of our granddaughters. And in March, our 6-year-old granddaughter caught it, as did the son-in-law. And the 6-year-old granddaughter, about 6 days later, was back to normal. The 40-year-old son-in-law, took him about a month. Now, so again, young people, we didn't know how it would impact the young. We didn't know it was the old, all that kind of stuff. But here's the amazing thing. Neither my daughter in the same house or the other granddaughter, 9-year-old, in the same house contracted it. How do 4 people stay in a home and not all of them get it? And so obviously it's not quite as contagious as we perceived at that point in time. Now, let's talk about what happened immediately. Immediately, because the unknown, and you don't know how contagious it is, we saw not only if you had your home for sale, we saw a record number of people in March and April that had their homes listed, delist them, saying, I don't want anyone walking through my home. I don't want to take the risk of catching this. Fair enough. Second thing that happened was we saw a massive decline. When I say massive, big percentages decline, almost 50% in what we call multifamily housing for sale. That's condominiums and co-ops in New York and what have you. And we saw that plunge. Now, we saw a big decline in single-family sales too, nationwide, not just in Houston, Texas. And that's because people were concerned of, if I'm going up the elevator in my condo or the stairwell in my apartment, can I contract this disease from my neighbors around me? Well, you learned early on, not necessarily. And in fact, I find it amazing when I get on airplanes and travel, in that my airline that I kind of live on, I like Southwest. I like to live on American. I actually fly all airlines, but one of the airlines made a comment on one of the flights we were on that the rate of coronavirus COVID-19 infection among their flight attendants is about 1/3 of the infection rate of the U.S. population. So here you are in a metal tube churning along at 30 or 40,000 feet for hours on end, and you're actually getting less of it. And that's because, well, we've done a lot of precautions, cleaning the HEPA filters that take out viruses. They refresh the air in the aircraft every 2 to 4 minutes, about 3 times what they used to. And you get on an airplane now, they don't have a flight every 15 minutes after it lands and takes off. They go in and completely sanitize that aircraft with the, ionized, in other words, electrically charged devices that will actually kind of make sure that everything's covered. So it's a little bit, and they're not serving you everything. In fact, many of these flights are not serving you all. On the way in, they hand you a little plastic baggie with a cookie and a plastic wrapper, a bottle of water.
Have a nice day.
And a sanitizing pad, and we won't see you until we land. The only time we'll see you is when we're walking up and down the aisle to make sure your face masks are on. So I think we've done a remarkable job on how we did. But what happened was we learned it's contagious. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to underplay this. Oh, and I'm going to say this up front. You can't value a human life. You can't measure, well, we're going to spend this much money, but not anymore, not to have a person have a fatality or suffer. You can't value human life. It's the most precious thing we have. But it's intriguing, and I said this early on. When I say early on, I think it was the 12th of March, my first one, 11th or 12th of March. This pandemic is not over until you can walk on a crowded elevator, take the last seat on an airplane, or go to a Texas A&M football game and not worry about it. And since it is not over yet. We still have those issues, but we got light at the end of the tunnel, folks, and that's good news. Now, it may not be over this summer, it may not be over this year. I don't know. We don't know about how this is going to mutate and everything else. This announcement this past week about those type things. But on the other hand, we sure are feeling a lot better about it today than we did just 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago.
That's right. But we have set real estate records in Houston, right?
And we have for this reason. You spent more time at home than any time in your lifetime. In our lifetimes. Now, our forefathers spent a lot more time at home because, you worked out in the daylight and you came home at night and you're in your house type logic. Therefore, your home has impacted your quality of life and your lifestyle more than it ever has. I say your house has the highest intrinsic value to you it ever has had because it impacts your life more than it ever has had. And as a result, we've seen record demand for housing. And we're, like you said, we're selling record home sales in Houston, Texas. Hey, think about this. This isn't true in the U.S., but in Houston, I want you to roll back to 2004, 5, 6, and 7, the housing bubble. In those days, you wanted to own a home not to live in, not to rent. You just wanted to own a home because the second you own one, someone is going to come along and pay you more for it. We had a professor at Texas A&M when I was in graduate school. He called it the bigger sucker doctrine. One big sucker came in and paid too much in hopes that a bigger sucker would come along and pay more. You didn't worry about renting it or even taking ownership of it. You'd even sell your purchase contract to someone else for a gain. We saw that during the bubble. What we're looking at now is people not trying to sell homes. They're trying to say, I want to live in that house or I want a second home for that house. And we're seeing a massive increase in both first-time home purchases. In fact, I think it was Redfin this past month said that it was the largest first-time home buyers and maybe since 1980 as a percentage of the population. And of course, low interest rates are fueling that demand, not just the value of a home as your place, it's yours and your safe haven and no one walks in and out of, but the lowest interest rates in history too. So we highest intrinsic value, lowest interest rates in history. And guys, look what we did up front. Look what the government did in protecting homeowners. Remember, I'm going to take you back to ugly 08. Remember, we had a housing bubble because the bigger sucker doctrine. You'd buy it in hopes to sell it for someone for a lot more money. And of course, when it crashed because we'd bid up prices too high. Not to use them, not to rent them, just to sell them to someone else. And then we saw a massive amount of people that lost their homes. In fact, it was fueled by, we call it subprime lending. That means to qualify for a loan, you needed a heartbeat. Not even a lot of them, just a couple, and you qualified. Fast forward today, and what we've been doing the last 3-4 years, and even today, it's the most restrictive lending you and I have seen in our lifetimes. This is probably the best book of loans that lenders have ever created, ever.
They're solid.
They're solid. And we weren't at the bloody edge of credit. We weren't maxed out before this started on our credit cards with car loans and home improvement loans, all this other kind of. So our credit was good. In fact, 2018 to 2019, and this is an amazing statistic. In the last 30 years, it was the largest average median household income increase in more than 3 decades. Went up 8.74%. That's after you adjust for inflation. So not only do we have not as much debt, we have a huge wad of cash sitting in our billfolds and our pocketbooks and our bank accounts. And so we were able to weather this. But the reason housing didn't go down this time, Congress acted. In fact, I have 2 heroes. Powell, head of the Fed, and Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury, with what they put together, and I think Congress kind of rubber stamped this, but they put together this thing where you immediately had at least 2 months forbearance in your home mortgage payments. You lost your job, or you don't even have to say you lost your job. You don't have to make 2 payments. You don't get evicted. Now, and there's no penalty or interest. They do get added on to the loan. You didn't miss those payments. You're still going to make them in the future. And then if it was an FHA loan, a VA, a USDA, a loan owned by Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, you could apply for another 180 days of forbearance and then apply for additional 180 days of forbearance. So technically we could have homeowners go 14 months without making a home loan and not lose their home. In other words, not lose their wealth. Home is the largest store of wealth for most households. And this time, in this downturn, we didn't lose it.
And before we take a break, and because you mentioned interest rates, where do you think they're going to go for 2021 at this point?
No place but up. No place but up. We're at 2.67%. 30-year conventional fixed-rate loans.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. In fact, I'm thinking inflation's hedging about 2%, which means your cost of borrowed money is pretty close to zero.
So if I'm a would-be buyer and I'm thinking about in 2021, I'm going to buy a house. The interest rate, how long do you think it's going to be like it is now? When is it going to move up as far as speculation? What do you think? It's
going to move up as soon as there's a lot of certainty in the marketplace. As this vaccine becomes more distributed, we're going to see a lot of people saying, you know what, I'm taking a lot of risk out of the marketplace. Economy is going to start growing faster. As the economy starts growing faster, you're going to have inflation, and then that means rates rise. I always say this. When's the best time? You're going to ask me this question because you just did. When's the best time to buy a home?
Now.
Well, here's my answer. Well, it's just like saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? 3 years ago was better to plant a tree than today, but today's better than 3 years from today. So the quicker the better, I think, on buying a home, particularly assuming you're going to be there at least 3 to 5 years.
Well said. We're going to come right back with more with Dr. Ted C. Jones. Thank you, Ted. We're coming right back. Stay with us, please.
If you're a real estate professional, then listen closely. Cyber criminals are targeting our industry. They are impersonating real estate professionals, homebuyers, sellers, and title agents. Their goal is to gain access to your inboxes, computers, and clients so they can steal information and funds. Does your business insurance offset these risks? Not sure? Contact Stewart Insurance to determine if your business is properly insured. Visit stewartinsurance.com or call 866-798-2827. Visit stewartinsurance.com or call 866-798-2827.
Let's continue our talk with Dr. Ted C. Jones. He's our chief economist at Stewart Title, one of our many distinctions. Ted, there is no other company in the title business that has their own chief economist. We're fortunate to have you. When we took the break, we were talking about 2021, some of the things that we can expect. You mentioned interest rates. What are some of the other things we should be on the lookout for in this new year?
So we all have this good light in the tunnel, good positive outlook, but this isn't over yet. And while we've weathered this storm incredibly well economically, oh, by the way,
very surprisingly so. Yes.
The stimulus that was passed last week by Congress was about 3 months late. Congress should have done that beforehand. They played politics instead of playing leadership. Notice I'm talking about both parties as we do this. But that said, the economy, I mean, we're going to be only down in the mid 4% range on GDP this year. And Goldman Sachs is forecasting a 5.3% positive GDP next year, but it's not equal. What this downturn has done is it has made corporate America, some of it, rich. Think about this. Amazon, look what their stock prices have done. Look at Microsoft and Apple, and look at this. Oh, by the way, the stock market's crazy. I'll tell you right now, the stock market, if there's a bubble out there, it's not in real estate, it's the stock market. I think we will live to see that in the next 30 months. The stock market say, we made a mistake. Irrational exuberance, as one of our former Fed chairman would say. But corporate America has done really well. Main Street America, man, they've been decimated. Look at your local jewelry stores. I want you to think about your favorite little local eatery that's not a corporate chain. And mind you, corporate chains too, because they're some of my favorites. I like the Papas, I like the Landry's chains. They're great food and what have you.
Me too.
But your local hole-in-the-wall place, the place you just love to go, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, it's kind of a subset of the American Restaurant Association. They say that 70% of all American restaurants are moms and pops. And they say that between now and next July or August till we get through this wave and we're all back and we're dining again, up to 85% of those mom and pops could go out of business. If that's the case, that's assuming you didn't lose one corporate restaurant. You could lose 60% of all the restaurants in America. Mom and pops are suffering. In fact, I'm going to tell you this. Tonight, if you want to keep that great little local eatery in business, go drive by, even pick up some curbside delivery, takeout, I don't care. These type of businesses live day to day on net cash flow. And they haven't had, I'm amazed we've not seen more bankruptcies and what have you in small business. But I want you to be particularly attention in your local neighborhoods. Look at the number of boarded up shops right now. It is heartbreaking to see that in local businesses. My wife each year takes my wristwatches in. Yeah, I still wear a wristwatch. Put new batteries in and what have you. Get them serviced to clean the ones that are still wind up. A person's going out of business, 70% off everything, going out of business. It's going to be a long time for some of these small businesses to come back into play. So mom and pop Main Street's been decimated, and a lot of corporate America's done extremely well. Now, corporate America doing extremely well. I'm not talking about the airlines. I'm not talking about hotels. Oh, my goodness. Think about airlines. How can you stay in business and run a fleet? You're running 30% of your business and getting 15, 20% of your revenues that you got a year ago. That is decimating. That's why if you want to have an airline system, you got to continue to subsidize them just to keep them in business. I think that's good business, by the way.
That's right. As far as the home sales have been up, but what about the price points? Ooh. Because they're all over the board. We hear about homes that are under $300,000 flying off the shelves. We hear about a resurgence of the $1 million homes here at the second half of the year, if I recall properly. But what's your take on the home sales as they've been so good? How has that been spread out through the various price points here in Houston?
So let's look at this real quick. First of all, anything below $500,000 sales are down. And they're down not because people don't want them. They're down because there's nothing left to sell. If you want to sell an automobile, you got to own one in the first place. If you want to sell a home, you have to have an active listings. And we just don't have any listings. In fact, we think listed inventory, most of the ranges below $500,000 is 2 to 3 months at best, with 6 months being normal, and below like 150,000. If there's a month inventory, it would be amazing, with 6 months being normal. So what I did is I looked at the four main counties. There's multiple counties in the Houston, Woodlands, Sugar Land, Metropolitan Statistical Area, but the four main counties. I look at Galveston, Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery counties, the big players, and I looked at year-to-date home sales. $1 million plus this year to date, we've sold 1,685. That's through November. A year ago was, think about this. A year ago, in $1 million plus homes, we're up 14.3%. 14.3%. I want to say that again. 14.3%. Those are massive increase in home sales in those 4 counties. So, and it's true with everything above 500,000, below 500,000, it's just you don't have anything left to sell. So we've just looked at an incredibly hot market. Our home sales, November is usually kind of a docile month. In fact, it's a short month where most of us are on vacation, holiday.
Other things on our minds,
Yeah, Thanksgiving, what have you. I think one of the tweets I put out noted that for Thanksgiving, this was a survey done November the 13th, 69% of Americans plan not to go any place for Christmas. 72% didn't go any place for Thanksgiving. But our single-family sales in November in Houston, Texas, we're up 25.6% compared to a year ago, and a year ago was all-time record in November. So I just want to show you how good and hot this market is. And again, it's because homes have the highest intrinsic value. This isn't limited to the homes we live in. It's being amplified in second homes, recreation homes. A lot of people, and by the way, drive time to a recreation home, we used to think 2 or 3 or 4 hours was all we want to do. Today, if you got within 10 hours, they say, I'll buy it. Because I can drive there. I don't have to get in an airplane. I don't have to sit in airport terminals. I can just drive it, get some fuel in between and what have you, and take my lunches, not even go into restaurants. And so we're seeing a huge resurgence in second homes, massive increase. So if you have one and you want to sell it, it's a great time to sell it. If you want one, well, low interest rates is one incredible place to buy. But, again, housing is hot. Now, is housing going to remain as hot as it was in 2021? It will, to a point. It'll remain hot until we feel so safe and comfortable between the vaccines and the herd immunity that we can go out and about. The second we start booking airplane tickets and cruise ships and resorts and spas and what have you, that home and that second home become less important to us. I think that'll evolve during the year, but I don't expect housing to do a big retract because people are buying it to live in it today, not to rent it. They're buying it to own it and not to sell it to someone else. So, in fact, the flip market this past month was down dramatically from 10 years ago, from last year or two. Still nice profits in it, but no one wants to sell a property right now. Just the opposite of what we've seen in the past. So listings are everything. Demand is hot, supply is low, and prices are up.
And when you say the home's under $500,000, that means if you have a home, you're listening right now, your home's under $500,000, it's in nice shape, it is presented properly by the right real estate professional, great pictures, even home staging, you're going to sell your home pretty quickly, but you better have a place to go to, right, Ted?
Exactly right. In fact, I think you hit the key words on this. Listen to your realtor, your real estate professional. Now, I will tell you this. Most people walk into a home looking for a reason not to buy it. Now, they want a home, don't get me wrong, but I don't want this one because of X, Y, and Z. It's never been more important for you, if you're selling your home, to listen to that consummate local real estate professional. If they tell you you need to paint that one room, paint it. If they tell you to declutter, and by the way, I'm going to tell you this, 99% of us need to declutter.
Absolutely.
and we need to understand that. You need to do that. Listen to your consummate real estate professional. They're the people that know that neighborhood like the back of your hand, their hand. And they know what sells and what's going to put off some people from selling. List them, pay attention to them on pricing and offering. If you're buying a home, that same thing. Your consummate real estate professional that's representing you, your agent that's working on your behalf, listen to what they say in offering. If they tell you, we really need to make this offer right this second, you better listen to that, because they know that there may be 5 or 6 other offers. You may have had something similar to this lately too.
Absolutely. Really. I could tell the story. I don't want to take the time, but yes, basically I have a home I just put on the market, and it was the first day it went on the market. I had an offer. I rejected the offer. Long story short, in a matter of 3 days, 5 people looked at the home. Actually, 2.5 days, let's say. 5 people looked at the home. 4 people put offers on it. And the first person that put the offer jacked up his offer $6,000.
But I'm going to ask this.
Now, it's not closed yet, but
I understand
just
that.
saying.
But I'm willing to bet you listen to your realtor and how to present the property and prepare it. Am I correct?
The key to this one is not only did the realtor play a major role, but she staged the home. And her staging was not just good, it was excellent. People are going nuts. And even me, I haven't been there to see it, but I've seen pictures, the staging pictures. It looks Architectural Digest. And this is a home under $200,000, but it's been remodeled. But if it didn't have that furniture in it, I know we would have not had this kind of excitement. It is incredible. Stage those homes. Declutter, make them look good, and listen to your realtor. There's no question about that, Ted.
We've covered that one topic. And that local consummate realtor professional is the key. I figure myself a real estate expert. I always use a realtor in local markets. Always, because if I'm unfamiliar with that market, I want them to, first of all, show me everything that's available. Tell them what I want. Even though I can look online, I may not know that that's what I want because they listen to you and see what you liked and picked up on that one. And secondly, for your negotiation, I don't mean negotiation just on price, but if you're buying, look at repairs, what stays, what doesn't stay. Those type things are all negotiable, and that's why that professional is earning every penny they're getting.
The other great thing about having the right real estate professional, will have one now with this market that knows how to handle the multiple offers if you're fortunate to get that. And I guess I'll take this moment to tip my hat to Kelly O'Dwyer in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, doing a phenomenal job up there. But anyway, Ted, the other thing we think about, let me put you, as I think about your knowledge, you're 24/7. You are looking at things that relate to the economy, the real estate economy, all the time. But let's say you were a realtor and the ball drops 2021, all of a sudden you became a real estate professional. You're out there helping people buy and sell with what you know. And for realtors listening, this is important, I think. How would you do anything different this year as a real estate professional, knowing what you do about the real estate economy?
I think the biggest issue today, whether you're listing or buying, is proper pricing. And I think that proper pricing has to be paramount in this thing. I love that saying, pigs get fat, but hogs get slaughtered. I've actually seen some in my own neighborhood, some homes that are still on the market, they lagged because they weren't properly prepared for the public and they were overpriced. Even in the hot economy, you can have an overpriced property. You got to listen to that professional and say what to do. Even when I was having my own appraisal company, I always said that I thought that the real estate agents that were, on the buying and selling sides knew more about values than I, the appraiser, did, because they see the individual motives of the buyers and sellers, not just the after the fact sales price, which is a statistical artifact. It's like looking in the rearview mirror if you think about that. Oh, you didn't know that dog was always in that house. Oh, you didn't know. You should have seen it before they fixed the landscaping out front. Oh, you didn't know. That type stuff. So that's it. Now, we're talking about how great the housing market has been, and it's going to be a pretty good year this coming year. On the flip side of that coin, the commercial real estate market has been abysmal. And we all know the demand for office is down. We all know the demand for retail is down. Just think about how much more you've bought online. Like we talked about those trends earlier. In fact, get this one. In Q3 of this year nationwide, commercial real estate sales of office buildings were down 62%. Commercial real estate sales of retail was down 63% in the third quarter. But then again, you look at industrial properties. Everything that we've been buying online that doesn't come from retail Main Street storefronts coming from industrial property. They don't need a nice expensive property on Main Street to pack boxes to ship them to you. That's industrial. And in fact, if you think about it, year to date, nationwide, industrial sales, first three quarters are only down 27%. Hotels, devastated. Down 85% in Q3. Oh, and remember we talked about that history may or repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme or deja vu all over again. I want to take you back to 2008. Between 2007 and 2008, hotel sales dropped 91.7%. All right, 2007, 2008, second quarter. Second quarter of this year, hotel sales from second quarter last year dropped 91%. We're seeing everything we saw in the last downturn again. Now, the difference is that downturn was the simple fact you couldn't borrow money to buy a commercial building. You can borrow money today, but a lot of lenders aren't willing to loan you that on those properties. But we're looking at commercial being hit pretty hard. Now, the one that's still in the air unknown are apartments. Who would have ever imagined? Remember I told you about all this ability on this forbearance that homeowners got. You can miss payments and you don't even get penalty and interest as long as everything's in a qualified forbearance program. We haven't done anything to help renters. And that's tough. Now, the CDC did something to help renters. Who would ever imagine that the CDC would be the one to put in place a moratorium on evictions from apartments for people that aren't paying their rents that have been impacted by COVID? And evidently, the stimulus bill that was passed last week, they've said we won't evict anyone through January. But after that, folks, we haven't helped out our renters at all. On the other hand, when you look at low interest rates, the lowest in history, the majority of markets right now are what we call you're better off. Over 70%, it's cheaper to own than rent. As interest rates rise into 2021, it could be by year end, if not by 2022 sometime, that all of a sudden it'll be cheaper to rent than own. And that's only because of rates rising, taking your monthly payment up. So we're going to expect some flip on that side. So renters, not that rents are going to go down, the simple fact, but it's going to be a lot better to rent than own, just like it's better to own than rent right now.
We are talking to our chief economist at Stewart Title, Dr. Ted C. Jones. Ted, we've had about 4 minutes or so. What else would you like people to know?
Oh, I want to tell you how we're doing. Because, this pandemic, it was like a freight train that hit us. And in the U.S., we lost 14.5% of all the jobs in March and April. And I want to compare that to Houston, Texas. In Houston, Texas, we only lost 11.3%. So this pandemic, despite cheap oil, and that's from February to April, despite cheap oil, which has just devastated the oil patch, so to speak, we lost a lot lower percentage of jobs in the U.S. Now, in the U.S., we've recovered 55.6% of all the jobs lost. In Houston, we've recovered right at 50%, 49.6%. So we haven't recovered as many back, but we didn't, lose quite as many. That's good news. So Houston, if you consider doing really, really well, housing, housing nationwide, and three things have really helped out this economy, the U.S. economy. Housing. It's been a driver between GDP. Think about it. When you buy a new home, what else do you buy new? New carpet, some paint. You talk about a bunch of stuff. New pool service, perhaps you get landscaping, all that kind of stuff. So that helps out the economy. Secondly, lowest interest rates in history. We've had a massive wave of people that have been able to refinance. Now, I want to tell you this, and here's the tragic part. First of all, the pandemic's tragic, but let me tell you the ugly part about the pandemic. It hasn't hit our upper income class or middle and upper income class income as hard as it hit our lower middle income and lower income class. In fact, how do I know that? We're looking at a record refinance wave. And I want to throw this out. If you haven't refinanced your home and your interest rate's above 3.5%, you're going to be there at least 3 years. You really need to look at refinancing right now. Black Knight said that you can save an average $307 a month on payments. Wow. Be there 3 years or more, it kind of pays to refinance. It hasn't hit our homeowners as hard because you can't refinance your house if you just lost your job. Therefore, it says our homeowners haven't lost their jobs. It hasn't hit prospective home buyers hard. How do we know that? Well, we're looking at all-time record sales here in Houston year to date right now. It has decimated people who didn't own a home because they couldn't afford one, and our lower income workers, lower middle class and lower class workers. It has decimated that segment. And think about all those restaurants that are going out of business or are going to unfortunately go out of business. It is a lot of their bailiwick on those type jobs. So it's not been an equal opportunity basher of people. It has really hit our lower income segment hardest.
And quickly, as far as on the flip side, luxury items, there's certain luxury items that are hard to get right now. Swimming pools, home remodeling.
Nationwide. Now, we talk about Houston, $1 million plus home sales. Nationwide, this November compared to a year ago, $1 million plus home sales were more than double. More than double. You go to your high-end car dealerships. They're selling car after car after car. They're out of stock. So this has been a very unique recession. High-end is normally low in a recession. This one was just the opposite. Came out with people having money in their pockets. Not everyone, but the people that had money continue to have money, and they've made this economy thrive.
I want to remind people, especially real estate professionals right here in Houston, Texas, we have business development people at all our offices. There's about 17 or so around Houston. They will be having events. There's Zoom events, I understand, with Dr. Ted C. Jones. So reach out if you're a realtor and you don't already know about it. Reach out to your closest Stewart Title office. Just go to stewart.com. Or if you know your business development person, yes, we have the A-team of business development people at Stewart Title. Just reach out to them. You'll find Dr. Jones has a presentation coming out, as he always does, but most of it's going to be done by Zoom this year, and that's going to be coming out. What do you have the title for it yet, Ted?
Oh.
They're always great.
Yeah, I thought old school because we got through this downturn old school. We started eating at home instead of eating out. We started our vacations were staycations at home. You talk about you couldn't get a swimming pool, above ground swimming pool. They were sold out in April and May.
Spas you can't get.
They're all gone. So I decided this year for 2021 the theme topic is the 3 R's of real estate in the economy, not reading, writing, arithmetic. Reinvent, all right? Recharge, reignite. And that's pretty much what we're doing and what the economy is doing as we speak right now.
And on that note, be sure to follow Dr. Ted C. Jones. Give him the coordinates again, Ted.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter, DRTCJ, and my blog at blog.stewart.com.
There you go, Dr. Ted C. Jones, the 8th wonder of the real estate world. Thank you, Dr. Jones, for being on the show. One of the great resources, one of the unique things we have at Stewart Title. Thank you so much.
In today's litigious society, it is imperative to have the proper insurance to offset the many risks facing your business, especially if you're a real estate broker. Your errors and omissions and cyber liability insurance can help limit the threat of these risks if you know what to look for. Not sure if your insurance addresses the risks facing your business? Contact Stewart Insurance to be confident your brokerage can withstand these risks. Stewart Insurance, 866-798-2827, stewartinsurance.com. That's stewartinsurance.com or call 866-798-2827.
Real Estate Matters would not be possible without our partner, Stewart Insurance, with a focus in real estate and a special focus on real estate brokers. Stewart Insurance creates insurance plans to address the risks facing our industry today. They invest a significant amount of time helping real estate broker owners offset and manage their risks. John Bramlett with Stewart Insurance is here for the final 2020 broadcast. Hey, John, here we go.
Fantastic, Bill. It's great to be with you, and I've enjoyed our year together.
I have enjoyed it, and I was thinking of a lot of thoughts over the weekend. I'm thinking about next year and all the stuff that we can do and bring more information to people, a little bit more fun as well. So it's going to be fascinating as we look back, we look ahead, and here you are bringing forth some tidbits of important insurance information once again.
Well, it's tough to follow Dr. Ted C. Jones. He's one of my favorite people, and he's always entertaining and, man, has more useful information than I think anybody I know.
I just thought
fantastic.
about it. He's the 8th wonder of the real estate world. You're the 8th wonder of the insurance world. Well, there we go. A new designation.
81st wonder of the
Let the word go forth. So here we are. Cyber risks are big, too. So I know you want to mention that.
Yeah, so there was for our local listeners, there was an interesting section in the most recent issue of the Houston Business Journal, and they were talking about risk mitigation. And one of the things that they talked about were through a study that was done by BOK Financial, what are the 5 top cyber attack risks? And this is across all industries, but it would still be relevant to our real estate partners and that we work with. The first one is social engineering, which many of us have heard about, and that's really the ability that a fraudster has to manipulate people into giving up confidential information. So if you think about it, they portray a vendor.
They try to get your confidence, like a con man. The
Absolutely.
Confidence, where that term comes from.
They say, this is an email from the CFO of the company, and I need this information. One of the new ones that they're using is, I'm taking Bill's place right now because Bill's in the hospital with COVID. So I'm the contact until Bill gets back. So that's the new one that they've come up with. So that idea of social engineering, and that's one where technology can't protect you. That it's the human factor on the social engineering that you have to have a good judgment, and you have to have protocols in place so that people understand what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. There's ransomware, which is exactly what it says. The cyber criminals find a way to take control of your data so you can't access it. And the only way that you can access it, unless you've got something backed up, is by paying the ransom that they set aside on that. So ransomware is the second one. Identity-based attacks, those usually take place if you have a weak password, or you have passwords that are relatively easy to figure out, and people can come in. It's your birth date, it's your address. Easily things. Our password. Malware, which is a term that's kind of a catch-all for all malicious software packages. So it could be a Trojan, like a Trojan is a malware that looks legit, but it's not. Or it could be a virus that's attached to a legitimate document. So you would click on something thinking it's a legit document, and it's a malware. And then the last one, and it's really kind of sad, are inside threats. So something within the organization that's being targeted. So it could be a disgruntled employee, a former employee. It could be somebody on your board. It could be somebody you do business with that's disgruntled. So those are kind of the five to think about. But as you think about your business, which one of those potentially could affect you? Could all of them potentially affect you? So what are you doing to mitigate those risks? And then on the insurance side, what are you doing to minimize those risks by offsetting the risk onto an insurance partner with something like a cyber liability policy?
Safe practices that we can incorporate are very important, and part of the answer in the second one, as you mentioned, is have the right insurance to complement the risk you're willing to take, and also what you're able to afford, and what you're doing, and what type of business, and all those things. And here it is, the year of the 2020 broadcast is finally over, but we're looking ahead. We're going to talk about some great things next year. Also, John, before we leave, let's tell people how they can reach out to Stewart Insurance. It's going to be great. Just give them a call at
866-798-2827. Call us at 866-798-2827.
And you're helping people be properly insured all over these great United States every day with an incredible team of professionals.
Absolutely. We've got a fantastic team at Stewart Insurance. We work with folks all over the country. I've got a client that I'm working with right now in Alabama and one in Florida.
How about that? Well, that's super awesome. And if you want to hear any and all past shows, just go to stewart.com/Houston. You want to learn more about Stewart Insurance, the menu they provide of insurance policies, stewartinsurance.com. And we want to thank you all for listening. If you've listened to any show or all the shows in 2020, thank you a million. The best, the safe and healthy holiday season to you and yours on behalf of both of us and our companies. Right, John?
Absolutely. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and have a great Christmas and Hanukkah holiday right now. And in the meantime, we'll see you in 2021, and John's going to be kicking off that show, first show.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to hosting again.
Until then, thank you so much for listening to Real Estate Matters with Stewart Title.
If you're a real estate professional, then listen closely. Cyber criminals are targeting our industry. They are impersonating real estate professionals, homebuyers, sellers, and title agents. Their goal is to gain access to your inboxes, computers, and clients so they can steal information and funds. Does your business insurance offset these risks? Not sure? Contact Stewart Insurance to determine if your business is properly insured. Visit stewartinsurance.com or call 866-798-2827.